Okay, we will start in 2 minutes, just allowing anyone that got late. So it's 5 minutes past our scheduled time, so I guess we would start. First of all, good afternoon to everyone. I'm Elsa Nunes. I'm Irradiar CEO. Irradiar is one of the entities that is co-organizing this summit. I wish to welcome everyone and once again, thank you for being here. Um, I will start for making a brief introduction both on our speakers and on our rapporteurs, kind of a short introduction just. And so we have today with us Alanus Radecki. He's CEO of the Data Competence Center for Cities and Regions, providing open source data infrastructure and know-how on data-driven strategies and solutions to cities and regions across Europe. Before this assignment, Alanus led the competence team Urban Governance Innovation at Fraunhofer IAO, and the innovation network Morgenstad City Insights. Then we have Jiří Marek. I hope my pronunciation is not that bad. Sorry. And Jiří comes from Brno in Czech Republic, where he works as open science manager at Masaryk University. He has as his primary responsibilities here at the university the development of open science policy on a day-to-day basis, creating a university support system towards open access to scientific publications and research data. Based on his current position and his chemistry major specialization in hydrogen technologies and ICT law, he is also specialized in open access, open agenda, and copyright law. Then we have Lorenzo Visaggio. He is a researcher. He was a colleague of mine in Irradiar's Academy. Lorenzo Visaggio is currently graduating in international relations at the University of Bologna. His field of specialization is crime and security studies, and he's also very interested in the relationship between technology and society, and is conducting research on smart cities related topics. Then we have as rapporteur for this session my colleague David Luz, who is a senior developer at Irradiar. He is specialized in information systems programming. And as senior developer, David is well established in the IT field, working over a number of digital platforms in a variety of creative areas, including making use of IoT and big data. And finally, we have, last but not least, we have also as a rapporteur, Gonçalo Rolo from Unparalleled Innovation. Gonçalo Rolo has a master's degree in electrical and computer engineering from Nova School of Science and Technology, and currently he works as a junior engineer at Unparalleled Innovation, also one of our partners in Aurora's project. So, after introducing everyone, I would like to invite and give the floor to Alanos to deliver his presentation. We are trying to organize this session with first the presentations and then the debate, but if someone is very eager to make a question, please use the chat and I will manage it in due time. So have a nice presentation, Alanos. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. So it's a great pleasure for me to be here today and to share some of our insights and some of our work around urban data. I tried to share my screen with you. I hope you are now able to see it.
Yes.
So we've agreed. I mean, I will not. Although we are talking here and the session is about security, I will only slightly touch upon security issues. My main focus is about data-driven cities and regions. And I will tell you a little bit about the Data Competence Center for Cities and Regions just in a second. When we start off with thinking about our life in cities, it is really, everything rather connected. Whatever we do during our normal day life and work, we come in touch with a lot of different municipal services throughout a normal day. We use the water system, we use the sewage system, we use electricity, we use housing, we use the public streets, etc., in a seamless way. So our life is very connected in cities, but unfortunately the data that we produce and the data that is also residing behind our application of infrastructures and municipal services is usually not very connected. It usually resides in individual silos. It resides in individual offices within the city administration or within special companies, etc. But often it's not connected. So just think about these two different sources of data, which you can see here in the graph. One is, for example, data about transportation and traffic, which stems from traffic sensors or streetlights. And on the other hand, you have data about weather and air quality, which comes from the air quality sensor. Both of these different data, they lie in different departments, and usually they come in different forms, they come in with different standards. So when we, in the past, what we've been doing a lot in our cities is we've created individual applications around them. One application to improve traffic, another application to improve or to monitor air quality, and they cannot talk to each other. Now, with all the complex issues around us, with the transition towards climate neutral and climate friendly cities, we can't afford to, solve our problems in cities with data silos. We need to find better ways to link the data. Why is that? Because basically from the data, there is a rich source of various benefits and various applications that we can only achieve with data in our cities, right? We start from collecting and harmonizing multiple types of raw data, and all of these data, we are already collecting them in our cities. Commercial data, static data, sensor data, private data from our mobile phones, etc. And by harmonizing and visualizing them in the first step, we can actually find information and visualize information which we wouldn't have otherwise. And in the second step, we can link the data and we can generate data-driven applications in our cities. And this is where we actually create a value for citizens, a value for our societies, for our cities. So when we break this down, this promise of urban data, I like to think of this as that there are, in principle, three main areas or three main drivers where data actually allows us to create new types of cities. One is, with data, we can reap all those efficiency gains, which we have in our cities and which we usually don't tap into because we just don't know about it. Only because we know where to find the next shared bike or the next shared car, we can cease to own an own car and rather use, a variety of mobility services that the city gives us. So by this, we can use the public space and every device in a city in a much more efficient way, right? Just because we have the information, the data about it at our fingertip. The second thing is that with data, we can do real-time management of urban systems. So we all know that our cities need to transition to carbon neutrality. And this we will only do by transitioning to renewable energies. Now, we all know the sun is not always shining, the wind doesn't always blow. We need the integration of a lot of different systems in order to improve our consumption of renewable energies, right? We need to be able to transform renewable heat to electricity when we need more electricity. We need to be able to store the energy when we have an excess of renewable energy, etc. And for all of this, we need data. We can only manage a flexible, decentral urban energy system if we do this based on data. And the last thing where we think that data is crucial for future urban development and urban planning is when it comes to decision making. So I think not only COVID has showed us, how complex decision making can become in times of crisis and in times of rapid change. By putting all the data together and starting to simulate and starting to run scenarios of urban development, we can come to much better informed decision and then actually plan and run our cities in a much better way. So all of these are gains and benefits which data brings to our cities, and without data we wouldn't be able to reap them, right? But now what we've seen in the past, and we've been working a lot on European pilot projects in the area of smart cities and communities. And what we've seen in the past is that several cities and regions start to embark on that journey of using data, but then there is, the process often stalls and it stays with the pilot project because in the past there were not enough, sort of agreed standardized processes and solutions and open solutions for cities to use. There were first commercial products available on the market, but often they led to a lock-in. So basically, a scalable approach towards data-driven cities has stalled in the past. And that was the reason why we created the Data Competence Center for Cities and Regions. It has come out of the Fraunhofer Society. Fraunhofer is Europe's largest organization for applied research. And it basically does that. It cuts through the issue of data management and data infrastructure, and it provides scalable, open source, low-cost data infrastructure and data management for cities and regions. Now, we've seen that the added value of data comes from the integration of the data. If we're able to integrate the air quality monitoring and the traffic management, we can improve the traffic management in a way that we have less traffic on our streets if we have a prognosis of bad air quality, right? So we need this harmonizing layer of data integration, where we are able to integrate all the different types of data, of real-time data, of static data, and then set a range of solutions on top. Now, in order to do that, I just want to bring across a scalable approach towards data-driven cities and regions. And it helps if we stay within the analogy of Lego, right? So basically there's 3 steps that we need to take in our cities and regions to come to grips with data and to put data to work for our cities. The first one is that we need to choose the platform. We need to choose the right platform based on open standards in order to start building, so that we know everything that we put on top is somehow compatible and is able to speak with each other. And then we need to build with thousands of different pieces that are existing already and that can be used and deployed to bring our data-driven cities to life. Or we can use predetermined kits, predetermined solutions that help us shape our cities in a way that we don't need to reinvent the wheel every time one city or region starts operating on data-driven solutions. Now let's first take a look at the platform. There is a couple of things that are very important for cities and regions if they introduce an urban data platform. The key essence is that it is built on open standards and it's interoperable. So within the European Innovation Partnership on Smart Cities and Communities, we've developed a reference architecture. And that reference architecture has been transformed into a DIN-Spec. DIN is the German Institute for Norms. So it basically it's a norm, it's a standard that describes how a urban data platform needs to be built. What are the building blocks? How can it be interoperable? Now we think a city should go beyond that and not only use a platform based on open standards, but it should also use a platform that is open source available, right? So that the city or the municipality doesn't lock itself in with one vendor. So basically what we've done is we provide an open source data platform for cities and regions that is based on that open standard. And thus it is able to scale quickly because cities and regions don't lock themselves in with one vendor. A key issue is data sovereignty. So data sovereignty means that the data owner is able to define the conditions for the usage of the data sets. And that is something that we really recommend every city and municipality to look into, because it ultimately enables to link not only open data, but also commercial data into settings, to work with data, for example, from, I don't know, from Airbnb, from MasterCard, from a navigation system in cars, etc., and put all this data to work in a coherent approach for the city. And the last point which we emphasize is that the platform provider, if the city chooses to have an external provider, should be a neutral provider. It should not be an entity that provides the platform and products or solutions on top of it. It should only provide the data management and the infrastructure management in order to facilitate the use of really like lots of different building blocks that can come together. So by now, the European Commission and many national funding programs have funded a lot of innovation in the area of data. So there's, hundreds, thousands of sensors, of connectivity, of special algorithms, of artificial intelligence available to use the data and build on top of it. The important thing is that those building blocks need to be compatible. And one approach to make sure they are compatible is by looking to the metadata that they come with. DCAT AP is a standard for metadata that we refer to, and it basically ensures that the data bits and pieces are able to communicate with each other. And then there is the predetermined kits. So I'm sure most of you have heard of FIWARE and maybe also the NGSI LD standard. That is basically a standard that helps to take developed data models. So for example, if a city comes up with an application, let's say to automatically manage the irrigation of the gardens and parks in the city, but for that it needs a specific data model. And if that data model is built on within the NGSI LD standard, any city can basically take and adopt that data model and only connect their own sensors to it. So that basically helps to rapidly scale good solutions from one city to many others based on something that is called the context broker, the FIWARE context broker. So these are, I guess, key building blocks. Of course, there are many more, but that you should consider when setting up a data-driven city. Choose an open standard, open source data platform. Work based on open standards with hundreds of different sensors and solution providers, and build on the NGSI LD standard for defined data models. Basically, what we've done with the Data Competence Center for Cities and Regions is that. So we've brought that together into an open source urban data platform, which we provide to cities and regions, or we also enable cities and regions to set it up and operate it by themselves. And we help connect all the existing data sets to it, but we also help connect solution providers or the open source community to link developments and applications such as air quality monitoring, such as citizen apps, such as traffic management systems, etc., to the data and built on top of the data so that it can easily and rapidly scale. When it comes to security, there is one key point I would like to make. What we do is we emphasize sort of highly scalable and certified cloud infrastructures to work with. So we've seen in the past that most cities, most regions do not have the existing cloud infrastructure that we would recommend to set up an urban data platform on top. We in the DKSR, we use the Open Telekom Cloud in Germany from the Deutsche Telekom, the German telecommunication provider. It is very scalable, it's very powerful, and it's located in Germany. And the important thing is, of course, that there is a redundance of data centers, so that the servers are always split into two buildings which are located far away from each other, and that your data, like the data infrastructure, is mirrored, right, in both buildings, in both data centers. So that is a key, I guess, element of data security that we built upon in order to make sure that the data is secure and that it is safe. So if one of those buildings would be flooded, for example, the data would still be available in the other one. So yeah, I think that is it from me for now. I very much look forward to the discussion. Feel free to ask questions if you have any. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. You made it seem so easy and simple, even though typically a very complex topic. And it was really interesting to get all this information. So for now, I will kindly ask everyone to keep the questions to the debate. And so I will invite our next speaker, Jirki, to take the floor and to share with us the presentation.
Oh, hello everyone. Thank you for the lovely introduction. I don't have presentation. I will just speak about it, and I think that I will very nicely follow up on the previous speaker. Actually, I work as an open science manager at Masaryk University, but also I'm part of the NGO called Open Cities in the Czech Republic. That is basically a practical tool for the cities how to basically disseminate open source solution among the cities. For now we have approximately 19 members, and we are also talking with several regions. And because of the topic of security of this call, so I would like to present our kind of special service for the members of our organization. We call it vulnerability scan, and basically it's the same problem the cities has with the cloud computing, because they are not able to have this cloud as was presented before, or they are not prepared for that. And it's also very important task for public procurement of these ideas. So we decided in Open Cities that we will try to help them and be a kind of partner similar like the DSKR, sorry, from Fraunhofer, as was mentioned. So basically we provide, for example, open source software for transparent budgeting or participatory budgeting. And now we also created a tool for not dissemination, but division of the subsidies, for example, for culture or environment or education, etc. All our programmers are kind of security based skilled, for the open source software. And we are also now in talks with our Ministry of Interior to publish a brochure about safe presentation, safe building of open source softwares in the Czech Republic. The tool that I would like to mention in detail, it's called Vulnerability Scan. That's basically a permanent scanning of our member cities if they agree, and they will give us the notice about their IP addresses, So they will have a series of scripts that will test these web pages and services of the cities, and we will get a report of so-called low-hanging fruits of cybersecurity issues, that we can present them to the cities, and together with our experts, for example, to give them some ideas how to improve their cybersecurity. Because to make a cybersecurity system for the city where I am from, Brno, it's a big city, 400,000 inhabitants. It's kind of easy, because probably this city usually has some company that is taking care of it. It's city company, not a private company, but their own infrastructure for making this happen, But there are a lot of cities, for example, in the Czech Republic, approximately 6,200. We are really decentralized in this governmental structure, and there are a lot of cities with, for example, 5,000 inhabitants or 15,000 inhabitants. And for them to build a cybersecurity, I would say, shield, it's kind of an issue, So for that reason, we with our experts, we said, okay, we could do something with that. And from actually May this month, we are starting to test it with one of our members, and hopefully by autumn we will have this service provided to our members. My previous or the previous speaker also mentioned the platform Fireware, as a building blocks of these smart cities and open source solutions. We are now in the talks also with Vienna. That's the city near Brno. It's the capital of Austria, and we are planning also one inter-regional project to basically to promote and to disseminate more information about this Fireware software. So I could agree with the previous speaker that this is one of the building blocks of modern open source family. And I would be glad to hear more about their experience with how many cities, for example, where already they have implemented this kind of software. For example, from our point of view, we have 19 members, and approximately 16 of them already has some sort of open source software in the production. So we can say that is quite a good result, at least for the Czech environment. This is one thing that I wanted to comment, and I'm open for the questions after the presentation, if you would like to know more, for example, in the detail. And second thing, what I'm dealing at the university level, there is another issue, and it is connected with the data, and usually with the COVID pandemic and with the health data. So basically, what we are doing, we are trying to help our researchers to share their data of research, but there are a huge amount of data that are personal data, for example, or some sort of very sensitive data. And so for that reason, we are trying to build a service called Sensitive Cloud, where they will be able to share it with predefined, with defined number of users, you know, what they want, for example, with the research group of the colleague or with the colleagues from another university, etc. But it will be all connected to some logs, you know, that we will comply with the GDPR compliance, basically, with this kind of activity. We think that is very important, for example, for our medical faculty or pharmaceutical faculty, but also, for example, for Faculty of Social Science, where there are a lot of psychology field data that are full of personal data, for example, from some transcripts, etc. So basically, I would agree 100% what was said before, that the open source is a very good tool for cities to prevent vendor lock-in solutions for the cities, because we heard it from many our colleagues that this is kind of problem, you know, for the public procurement, etc. And the platform for deploying this kind of solution is needed, you know. So for that reason, with our organization Open Cities, we decided that we will be this interlink connector, you know, between the cities, and we would enable the sharing of software between our members. What's kind of special and what we think that it can be a kind of the way forward is that many of our members or other cities in the Czech Republic, they already built some sort of pieces of open source software, you know. So we would like to give them the possibility to basically give us the software. We will basically, it's called refactoring the process, you know. We will make it possible to be used by the others, you know, and we will provide it as a service or as an open source software they can implement again on their you know, servers, etc. So with this idea, we are trying to find the vendor lock-in solutions in the Czech Republic. So, and last comment is connected to the like overall cybersecurity issue. As we made some sort of I would say very easy survey about our members and also about the cities in the Czech Republic, what we know. So the cybersecurity issue is an important topic, and mainly what we perceive for the future is that the middle-sized cities will be the one that will look for the solution in coming years, you know, because usually the big cities like Prague, our capital, or the city of Brno, as I have mentioned, that they already know what to do, I would say, you know, at least they have some infrastructure. But these smaller cities, they have two possibilities: to buy a very I would say expensive vulnerability scan from some expert company, or for example try step by step working as a community, you know, and to share best practice. So we are trying to provide this kind of stuff. So if to sum up, I would say that what was presented before, so we at the Czech Republic do the practical thing really, and cooperation with the cities and talking with them on their everyday problems that could be sent as a last remark. So thank you very much for the possibility and for invitation to speak here, and I pass the board back to the studio as it is.
Thank you so much for such a vivid presentation. We are getting quite enthusiastic about all this, of course. And once again, I ask everyone to keep the questions, write them down or something like that. And we will have now Lorenzo, and afterwards, then we will go to the debate mode. Lorenzo, this floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay.
And we have your presentation. Okay.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lorenzo, Elsa already presented me. It is a pleasure and an honor for me to talk to you today. And while being an intern at Hradiare, I was asked and appointed by Marcos to some research for the Aurora project on the, let's say, security for rural areas. So at first, I have to confess, I had to had a look at rural areas, because as a matter of fact, in the security field, but also in smart cities or smart in general field, the rural areas are do not interest as much as urban areas traditionally. I just think about the classic catchphrase, urban population is growing and blah blah blah. But what about rural areas? I mean, if you look at the map that is provided by the OECD statistics, the area in green is the one that is largely, predominantly, rural. So why do not 300 million people that represent almost 60% of the European population matter as urban areas, or as urban populations? So along with some material, I just wanted to point your attention, in case if you're interest in this paper by Marshall and Johnson, crime in rural areas for what concerns traditional crime, that we'll see in a moment. And I used the statistics from both the Eurobarometer, that prepared a survey on Europeans' attitudes towards cybersecurity, and Eurostat with the individuals' levels of internet skills. The statistics, I'll say it later. So for what concerns traditional crime, rural areas are most of the time conceived as sort of perfect place where no crimes are committed, but that cannot be far from the truth. As a matter of fact, the typology, the types of crimes that are committed in rural areas are pretty much similar to the ones in urban areas, although the attention is pointed most of the times to alcohol abuse or speed with car races and long roads in rural areas, or problems related to farming and burglars. But within this context, I reckon that for the communitarian nature of rural areas, community policing, that is the idea that law enforcement and public authorities engage in the same community as the place they're ruling, sounds like a great idea in this respect. Moving to the digital side, I aggregated the data for the Aurora partner countries to provide an average, and I wanted to get more in depth of what is the digital divide. So I put the focus on the differences between rural areas and large towns. So the gap row represent the differences between rural and large town rows. So as we can see, concerns over cybercrime, people in the rural areas do seem to be a bit aware of what is cybersecurity, or well, from let's say cybercrime and cybersecurity related problems. But they do understand to be a bit less informed than people in the urban areas. So for example, 6% less. And most importantly, 7% less of people think they are able enough to protect for cybercrime. So the statistics, and this ones too, somehow suggested me that individuals in rural areas are kind of conscious of not being prepared enough in the cyber layer. And this is somehow confirmed by the fact that, for example, people in the rural areas are more concerned about individuals in urban areas of the security of online payments and the misusage of personal data. But quite, let's say, curiously, at least, they are less aware of the existence of service to report online illegalities. For example, authorities, that is the easiest way. And have installed less antivirus softwares and especially modified less times security settings of browsers. So it kind of confirms what Dr. Marek was saying before about the issue of building a cybersecurity shield in rural areas, so less populated or far from center cities. Then with Markus, we were talking, doing some kind of brainstorming of what could be for a while, but more generally, some smart solution to improve security. And I would like to do some debate about it with you. I individuated 3 core areas that I think are very, very important. The first one is quick emergency response. So one of the main problems in rural areas is that they are far from services, and emergencies, for example, calling an ambulance very easily, could be a problem most of the time. So nowadays we have drones that could, I saw the other day a drone that could fly 100 kilometers per hour and deliver a defibrillator or all sorts of like first response emergency kits. Second one, most importantly for the cyber layer per se, is improve connectivity. That does not only mean the physical part on transportations and stuff like that, but it is quite problematic today that, as the member of European Parliament, Jozo Radoš, I hope I pronounced it well, underlined that just 25% of the rural areas are covered by fast or ultra-fast broadband, compared to 70% in urban areas. This is a too wide gap in Europe, and we have to deal with that. Last but not least, also farming. So farming is really evolving in the last years, is digitizing a lot, so especially with artificial intelligence related solutions, but also all sorts of natural problems, fires and chemical hazards and stuff like that. So we need some kinds of solutions that will prevent it, and they're all connected. To conclude, and somehow to connect with what previous colleagues were saying, and specifying for what concerns, for example, our Auroral project that deals with rural areas, all sorts of solutions, from my point of view as a researcher in the security field, will somehow improve security if data is treated in a certain way, and is especially if it is done with the security by design approach. So that's it. Thanks everyone for the attention, and I hope it was somehow useful to everyone, and can't wait for the debate.
Okay, thank you so much, Lorenzo. It was quite interesting to see how you could gather all that information and show us all that numbers, because statistics, as they say, they don't lie. So quite interesting your approach. So now we can use this time for the debate session. I invite you to show up with some questions, either directly or in the chat. If you want to direct them to our speakers, it's okay. And if you want just to set them for the overall debate, it's also okay. So it's more or less, the rules are no rules, as long as we have, yes, a fruitful conversation. As I was saying, you can either use the chat or we can unmute you if necessary, no problem. So if everyone is shy or just still enjoying the...
I might have a question.
Yes, Lorenzo, go ahead, please.
Okay, so for everyone, but especially for Dr. Marek, I was really interested in the part when you talk about the smaller cities and how, let's say, they do not possess the capabilities or even the knowledge to build a cybersecurity shield from within. So I would like to ask you, because I'm I'm researching it actually in these days. The role of, let's say, digital awareness, education in this respect. Do you think what is the role of that compared to what can be like a very a top product of IBM security scans or antivirus softwares or something like that?
Yeah, there are I think 2 or 3 parts of the problem. Firstly, in small city, you don't have IT guy, you know, that's just simple like that, you know. So you need someone to give you feedback, because usually there are not many, I would say, cities, small cities that would have a mayor, for example, a person that is really skillful in IT, you know. So this is one problem, that you don't have actually the personal resources for that. Second thing is that usually if you are in the small city and you don't have not the specialized resources, but you also the agenda is broader, you know, then you are able to tackle, because there is a basically these mayors, at least for example for 1 or 2 or 5,000 inhabitants, you know, they usually have another job, you know, to that. So for example, the cybersecurity in general is not such a problem, because they usually have email, you know, for doing, and then some sort of I would say budgeting, maybe participatory budgeting, but nothing important. But so this is kind of that you don't have time and you don't have people, you know, and this is probably the one thing. On the other hand, there are forums, for example, where these kind of officers or mayors are invited by the state, you know, and this is, in my opinion, for this type of conversation, it's a important place, you know. But usually you talk, for now, at least what I see from the Czech Republic, you talk a lot about digitalization, you know, about how it can be useful, etc. But you don't talk so much about the cybersecurity yet, you know. So for that reason, we decided that we will make this digital awareness about cybersecurity better, you know, and because what we have as a I would say advantage is that when we share resources from various cities, or that we share the open source that is built for once, and then it can be divided to the members, you know. So I would say that we have a very good prices for the membership, you know. So for that reason, we are trying to be available for also the small cities, and we are like welcoming them, because then we think that if we have more members, so we can put, for example, some expert position, you know, for the government or something like that, you know. So for that reason, we think it can work, you know, and raise the digital awareness in this perspective. And for that reason, the guy, our expert on cybersecurity, said, "Hey, I'm experienced for these big companies, you know, but I would like to play somewhere, you know, because these are the very nice thing that you can put these scripts, you know, to the specialized things." So he said, "Hey, I will program a script that will permanently test it, you know, and it will probably bring you at least some information, because usually from my experience from these big companies, usually the majority is these small data leaks, you know, data problems, you know, etc. So this is what we will test it basically, and hopefully that we will raise the digital awareness about cybersecurity. That should be the goal for our next and 2023 year also. So very, very good thing. We think that it's problem that they don't know it, or they don't have time, or they don't have this person, you know. So we are trying to be in the middle of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really, really interesting.
Thank you. So, more questions from the audience? I would like to make a question that is more or less in the tip of my tongue since 2 or 3 days ago, because I was talking to someone and this comment was made. And so it relates mainly to what do you consider to be the main threats that are related to information security? namely in what regards personal data in the context of the smart development, let us say smart cities or smart communities. Just to give you a little context, I was talking to someone, and of course, the major topic of our conversations in the latest months is about COVID. And that person was saying that the personal data protection can make it more difficult to, for instance, have everyone vaccinated with access to that resource, and then also share this information and so on. So, of course, that in Europe, personal data protection is a major issue. And so I would like to hear your comments as, of course, experts in this field. What do you think about it? Because some people say that we have gone from a position where anything was protected to another position where everything is just locked. So your comments on this, please.
Well, maybe I can go first. So obviously, I think recent regulations in Europe have contributed to a much higher awareness of personal data protection, and you particularly raised the question of personal data, right? So what I would see is that in our work with cities and municipalities, yes, there is indeed, let's say, this like the emotion towards personal data protection, that of course this is above everything else. And at the same time, since we also work with smaller cities and regions, the knowledge about personal data protection isn't very broad, I would say, and that leads to the situation which you have described, that better not share any data before I make a mistake. That's a bit like what we see now. There is of course a range of approaches that we are applying to using data from the public space, using data which by looking at it, you might think there is a clear risk of jeopardizing personal data protection, but you can use it if you apply the right technologies or processes. So take, for example, data that come from CCTV cameras from the public realm. It is totally possible to eliminate all the data that is not necessary for the specific purpose that you want to use the data for, and only transmit that bit of the data that you need. So instead of transmitting an image of a person and a face and everything, and then working with that, you can strip the image already within the sensor, within the camera, and only submit a dot that is moving, right? So then you already take away all the information, all the personal data inside the actual sensor, right? You call it edge computing. So you apply already algorithms to anonymize the data before the data leaves the actual sensor and gets sent, for example, to the data platform or to be processed. So that is, I think, an approach that is very powerful, and it helps us to put all these data to use without actually jeopardizing the protection of personal data. A second approach is to anonymize the data in a different way. So, for example, we've been using mobile phone operation data in order to improve urban planning for transportation and traffic, right? If you use the mobile phone data, you can see flows of people through the city. You can see where do they come from, where do they go from, how do I need to change maybe my urban planning to accommodate for better public transportation, etc. Now, GDPR tells us it is illegal to use mobile phone operation data, of course, because we run the risk of jeopardizing the protection of personal data, because ultimately it's personal data. Now you can anonymize that data by clustering the data so that you can not see more than 5 or 10 individuals. That is the highest granularity that you get. And by anonymizing, so by aggregating the data set so that you find only 10 individuals in one data cluster, you cannot deduce on the final person who is, the one with the mobile phone. So that is another technique that helps you to work with data and to protect the personal data at the same time. And I think these technologies, these approaches they're not known well enough, because of course they exist and they allow us to use the data and to be in line with GDPR at the same time. And I think this is important. I think GDPR is very important, and it's great that we have it. We just have to find the technologies and apply these technologies to anonymize the data, so we are able to protect personal data and still use the data at the same time. It's totally possible.
I would agree with that. GDPR is not to lock everything. It's basically to put the framework in place. For example, the same data protection, personal data protection was plus minus before in the Czech Republic. So nothing changed, I would say, with the GDPR. But there was, for example, a big I would say marketing campaign from the legal offices that presented at the cities that this is a problem, and you will get fined and etc. And then there was the legal because the GDPR said that the fines will be based on the implementation possibilities of for member states. So for example, if the city makes a problem in the Czech Republic with that, there is no such fine, as this for the companies. So this was then made basically aware. But one of my friends told me, and he's working also on the data platform, or he said basically GDPR brought us very good thing in one point, and is that the cities finally started to do at least some sort of audit in their data, because they had to, to at least bring some measures. So so this is from the cities. I would say that these technologies are not known, as was mentioned before, and the problem is that these technologies are not available, what I know, at least for the small cities. They don't know about it, or they have no priority on that. So for that reason, they are sometimes very strictly following GDPR, like everything clocking. On the other hand, at the university level, we are working with the concept of not open data, but fair data. That means basically data prepared that if you click, you have open data. If you not, you don't have it, but you have it with very good metadata description, etc. And very well prepared for the interoperability. And these data can be used, for example, for sharing with the sensitive cloud that I mentioned. The problem is when we start to talk, for example, with the researchers about open data, they said, oh, this is a problem, I don't want to share it, someone will steal my research, etc. Some other group will know what I'm doing, etc. So for that reason, we said, hey, don't worry, we are talking about the fair data. So basically it's about good practice in data management planning, and this is something that has to come also to the cities, because usually cities are not planning the data sources, at least what I have experienced in the Czech Republic. And yeah, and it will help, and GDPR just set the framework. So it's possible to share data. It's possible to anonymize them. It's possible to use some sort of technologies that will help you to share it in the, I would say, only with the person that you would like, but this is not the common practice yet, at least from my experience.
So there's life after GDPR as a conclusion. Okay, so we have here a question. I think that partially Lorenzo has already answered it, but nevertheless, I think we can go through it. And it's Ashburn that is asking, please give examples of security measures to meet quick emergency response, probably delivered by drones technology. I don't know if you, Lorenzo, wants to start.
So as I already sent the link, I was referring to this particular drone that I think it's really, really cool. So, but there are other ways. For example, I was reading the book by Elliot Higgins, the founder of Bellingcat, and I was talking the investigative journalist company, and it was talking about software that for law enforcement agencies and first responders that actually receives calls, and with artificial intelligence it just isolates the, let's say, the important data, for example place and stuff like that, to send the closest police car or ambulance there. There are some kinds of solutions for that. I mean, and it is actually a problem also of urban areas, but I reckon it's much more for rural areas. But drones are an enormous market nowadays. So you can find plenty of examples of ambulance drones that will be employed. I think they will be very, very, very popular in the emergency field in the next few years.
Maybe if I can add one thing, not maybe
Yes.
to this topic, and I agree that the drones of every kind will be kind of. I think that they are already testing in California some sort of logistic parcel. So it will be funny from the legal point how to deal with that, you know, within the cities, and what will be the, for example, the structures to navigate the drones, you know, if something happens, you know, because personally I think that it can be. It has to be some sort also the smart infrastructure like on the ground, for example, that will help you, not only GPS or anything like that. And you mentioned before the life after GDPR. Actually, life after GDPR is also the thing that is coming with the European data strategy and these 9+1 data spaces basically, and sharing data, for example, from financial sector, from agriculture, mobility, etc. Because what is already happening in the, I would say, public sector and at the universities will going to happen in business data also, you know, and in that direction you need the technologies that Alan actually mentioned, you know, because the companies will usually not produce so much open data. So I think that this will be made publicly available. The knowledge will be more and more available for everyday life. I'm looking forward also for the data. It caused data. Data Act or something like that. It will be coming in 2022 or 23. And there is, for example, the concept of data altruism organization, you know, that you will find some sort of organization that will help you in the like digital services of the state. They will help you to share this data, you know, and they will be the one who will, for example, has these non-anonymized data, for example, and they will be able to promote it between the companies, you know. So this is kind of also the legal perspective. It's important, in my opinion, to follow what's happening from the European Union in the package of digital single market. This is kind of important issue for that.
Okay, so any more questions coming from our audience? I would like, yes, go ahead, please.
I have one question to Alanus, actually. How many cities do you work, actually?
Yes, thank you, Jiri. So the urban data platform that we are applying is at the moment up and running for about 40 something cities. So it's been developed a couple of years back, and it's been deployed in roughly 40 plus cities. Now we are publishing as an open data, as an open source data platform. So before it was developed as an enterprise data platform, and it's being deployed and applied, with 40 plus cities. At the moment, we are publishing it, and we're working with cities like Cologne or Mainz, Karlsruhe in Germany, to now deploy the open source version of the platform.
So it's mainly in Germany, right? Germany cities.
Yes, it's mainly in Germany. It's also being deployed in other EU member states, but then usually based. So usually in the past it was deployed together, a solution and the platform, right? So coming from the use case. And now when we're going open source, we basically split this, right? So what we do is we take over the provision of the data platform and the operation and the hosting and the management. And we can see that particularly for smaller and medium-sized cities, this is really interesting, right? Because they can just give us that data stuff, and we deploy it in a very high quality and high performing cloud infrastructure for them. And then they can concentrate on what to build on top of it. And for that, we work with a very large network of solution providers, open source community, but also commercial solution providers. And then whatever the city needs, we can find the right partner to help them deploy the right use cases.
Yeah, I think that it's, for example, also Paris heavily invested in open source, and also there are some Spanish solutions for that. For example, in the participatory budgeting that we were looking for. Actually, Prague, city of Prague, is developing Golemio data platform. Actually, it's kind of similar as you were mentioning also. So I think that the next step in this open source will be not reinventing the wheel, between the cities in the one nation, but after that it will be not reinventing the wheel in the Europe. So. It would be nice, for example, to share some maybe insights, because we have a lot of experts that work with us, for example, partially, or it's about 25 people that are together somehow working on that, but not in one time, for example. So so for me, if you are open to that, so maybe it would be nice to have a chat also about that.
Of course, I would be very pleased. And I think, let me just emphasize one thing where I think there is, real added value also for small and medium-sized cities and regions. What we are doing is we bring together the cities that use this platform, or also other platforms that are based on the FIWARE standard. And then we work together on the solution and so on the data models, right? So for example, if one city says, hey, you know what, I think we need to find a solution about parking in the city center. We need to improve parking. What can we do? Then we bring them together, and we sit together with different municipalities who say, hey, I have the same issue. Can we please solve that with data? And we develop together, we assess the problem, then we develop one data model, right? That tells you we need this type of parking sensor data, and we need this type of street data, and this type of, I don't know, data from the traffic lights, and we bring it together in a specific model with a specific calculation, and then we display it in a GIS database in that way, and it shows you green for high probability to find a parking slot, and yellow for medium probability, and red for, okay, it's probably locked, there's no parking slot available. So then we have one data model, and it can be deployed for all cities that are using the platform, right? So you develop it together once, it's very cost efficient, and then everyone can deploy it. They just need to connect their own sensors. So that helps to really scale. And of course, this should be done on European level. Yes, this is very important, I believe. So
I think that there is a new, also the new open source strategy for public administration in place from the European Commission. So we are basically analyzing it also now. And and as I mentioned in the presentation, we are going to work with Vienna on the cooperation with the FIWARE platform. So I think that this makes sense to get connected.
Very good. Thank you.
So good selection of speakers. Thank you, Iradia.
It's kind of a networking event. Okay, I was just wondering when I was listening to this last piece of the conversation, mainly from what you were saying, Alanush, somehow I would like to understand if the challenges that are related not only to smart cities but to smart communities. Of course, relating also to the rural aspects, to the connection between medium or small-sized cities and so on, if somehow they are already popping up in your platform, because there are some specific aspects that are very related to these rural characteristics, to the
Yes.
need of people to circulate among regions and so on. How do you see this happening?
So yes, we are seeing, of course, slightly different needs in the rural regions than in the condensed urban agglomerations. One example is the different availability of public transportation, right? In rural regions, you have very sparsely, very sparse public transportation. Obviously, because there are just less people sharing the space. So what we have seen in the past is that if you put data to work in a smart way, you can really improve the public transportation for the rural areas. For example, by analyzing exactly the patterns of movement. Where do people need to go from where to where, when? You can do that by using traffic data, by using data from navigation systems. You can do it by using also mobile phone operation data, or even existing public transportation data, and then starting to modify the public transportation service. Instead of offering fixed routes, you can start offering flexible routes. You can start offering smaller vehicles and flexible routes that can be called maybe by the smartphone, right? Maybe by a specific button, or like via the internet, whatever. And then through this, if you put some algorithms behind it, the service starts to learn what is the most frequented route, at what times do people need, and then you can adopt also a public transportation system to the rural region. That's one thing. Another one is often in the rural regions, if you try to maintain infrastructure, it is quite costly. So if you want to maintain a water infrastructure, if you want to maintain, for example, we've been working with public housing institutions also in rural regions. So they have to travel a long time to make sure that, for example, everything is closed, or all the water pipes are locked, etc. And if you automate that, right, and you put, for example, sensors in the system, and you put a specific connectivity system to work, you can save a lot of money and be more efficient in surveying your infrastructure and running your infrastructure, basically in a digital way. So these are some examples where we can see there are specific needs coming from the rural regions, and you can put data to work to solve them, actually.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, are there any more questions? Well, I cannot resist to do, but I promise this is my last question. Well, this is not my role to be always making people questions, but okay, I cannot resist. Being still living the COVID-19 pandemic effects, we have heard many people, both related to health or other sectors, say that this pandemic is not going to be the only one. Much more will come. And this is also, and this is mainly an urban issue, because where people are more concentrated, they tend to have more health issues. So how do you see this, this risk, this health risk, this human risk being taken into consideration in what regards smart cities, smart communities, smart management, let us say?
Mm.
For me, at least, what Alanus mentioned in the end of the presentation about evidence-based policy making is that there are not infrastructures ready for the public administration to easily get the necessary data, you know, for make a informed decision. For example, there is also the concept of city science or science diplomacy, but basically working with the scientific data for the good of public administration, you know. And this is, for example, is developing in Barcelona now. Amsterdam is trying something like that. They have actually open source tool for matchmaking scientists and the public officers. So this is something that is missing. And for example, from the point of when we were talking about GDPR and this personal data, because a lot of the health issues are connected to personal data. So there is also I would say need in the legislation to prepare the legislation for sharing these kind of data also for the reason of research in such cases, you know. And it's not and not only in the state of emergency, but to be preventive, you know, of that, you know. And for that reason, you need these technologies, as Alanus mentioned before, in that you have to anonymize the data, and the researcher, the majority of researchers should work only with the anonymized data, you know, but not with the the raw data. So this is, for example, what is missing, because from the legal point, you have a legal title to handle personal data, but if there is the consensus that is widely used, and then there are others, you know, like the it's called oprávněný zájem. Sorry, I can now I can't pick the word, but in the state of non-emergency, so you can't use it for the kind of research, because in research you can't say what you are going to research, what is going to be research, you know, because you sometimes you don't know, you know. And when you go with the research in one point, you will need another data, and this is the problem, you know, because it goes contra the principles of GDPR, you know, in the first place, to close, and this is to basically use. So for example, what we are going to work probably in the Czech landscape is that we will look on the different laws that are connected to some data points of the public administration that will enable to share the data for kind of this health and security research, you know, for the researchers of the community, you know. I don't know how to say it better, but there is not only the technical problems, but also the legal problems that you just, the ministry, for example, can't unite some types of data and send it to you in anonymous way. You know, they have no legal authority to combine it in the first place, you know, and that's for example the problem.
Just to add, maybe from one different, very practical angle to your question, one example of how we use data to answer or work or support the COVID-19 pandemic correspondence is that we, like colleagues, Fraunhofer colleagues of us in Lemgo, I can post the dashboard here, so you can have a look at the dashboard. Just a second. Just post it here. If you click on the dashboard, you will see the dashboard of a city in Germany called Lemgo, where we experimented with measuring the physical proximity of people in the public realm. So there are some streets and some places in the city, like the marketplace, or you know, some shopping streets, where of course people sometimes it gets very crowded, And what we have deployed is a sort of an algorithm that analyzes in real time the webcam data and measures the proximity of people. So, and in that dashboard, you see at the very right side it says physical distance, and at the moment it's 63%. So that basically shows like how, you know, are citizens staying away from each other? Are they keeping the distance, or are they too close to each other? If so, then the municipality would have to intervene, or they would have to, close down the shops or reduce the amount of people going to the inner city. So through this, you can generate some evidence on whether or not your measures are actually working.
Thank you so much. So,
if I can add something.
Yes, of course, Lorenzo.
On a macro level, one of the main concerns some professors and researchers have about the pandemic was the risk of massive surveillance in this respect. You can see plenty of examples on non-European cities. And to connect for what we were saying before, we were talking about privacy, the GDPR really helped in this respect, because it didn't put a brake on development, I think, but it just moved it towards citizen-centered solutions. And this includes also surveillance. So the risk is just behind the corner because of personal data and so on. But with this kind of legislations and this kind of projects, we can just walk on this very perilous line and do like the LemGo projects to collect a lot of data from webcams and people, but in a not only sustainable but also social centered way. So I really like it. But generally speaking, there are a lot of concerns about surveillance in this respect. It really depends on the topic. We will see in the future. I'm very curious if we will be prepared enough next time, maybe more data and more knowledge.
To tell you the truth, I hope I don't see you next time, but okay, nevertheless. Okay, so I think it's now time to close. I would like to thank everyone to be here, and of course, especially to our speakers. Very special thanks to Lorenzo, and also to my colleague David. And it was really a nice way to spend our afternoon, I think, because we were covering so interesting and real, actual topics that are really affecting our lives, and that is something that is very useful and also very interesting. So kind of a two-way to win. So thank you very much. I kindly invite you to keep with us during this week of this summit and to take advantages of everything that is happening, and of course participating like you did today so well. Thank you all, and see you soon, I hope. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.